Welcome to Huntington Beach. What do you say? My name is Curtis Ganji. I'm the sales vice president for our U.S. channels business, and I got a guy behind me who usually stands in front of me because he's marketing.
Yeah, Graciano Bayo. Nice to meet everybody. Those that I haven't, welcome to sunny California.
All right, I'm going to do it again. What the heck, guys? So listen, we're the two guys you're going to have to look at for most of the next day and a half. So we're going to apologize for that right now.
Pretty annoying.
Yeah, pretty gross. I did not choose this. I don't know who did.
Someone has to look good up here.
That's right. So listen, you know, as an Italian kid from Chicago, I have to start out with one thing. How did everybody get in my room? No? Anybody? Old enough? Dean Martin? Nothing? Was it my delivery? What was it?
It was a delayed response.
So listen, we've got a fun-filled, packed agenda for the next day and a half. I think our marketing team, with input from our sales organization and our product line folks, have really done an excellent job of making this worth everybody's while, okay? And so you guys have an agenda in front of you. We'll get to that in a little while. We traditionally start out talking at you guys, trying to set the stage for Eaton and the channel, how we're going to go to market and things like that. We're going to save that a little bit. And I think Graciano's got a great kickoff to our event today, which means I'm going to stop talking and let him introduce how we're going to roll today.
Yeah, so the general theme, guys, for the next couple of days, it's going to go by quick, hopefully, because we're going to be having a lot of fun, right? The general theme is really going to be about making sure that we, collectively, are ready for the rapid change that's coming and is here from an IT market perspective, from a data center vertical perspective. We really want to be ready. We really want to make sure that we're ready as a team, as a collective partner and vendor relationship to really go after it. And we thought, all right, so should we have maybe Gartner talk about the trends? Should we have maybe, you know, some industry analysts really tell us where we should go in the future and how is the cloud going to consume us? No. We went a totally different route. A lot of us in this room, from a marketing perspective, have had the honor to go to Duke University's education for marketing advanced communications for executives course. And this is taught by a professor. Her name is Dory Clark, who's from Harvard Business, and she's very published. And what she does in this course, it's a 4-day course, is really teach us about not only reinventing your approach in the way that you present, in the way that you present your company, but also about what is it that you need to do to evolve. And her first book, Reinventing You, was definitely a page turner for me. And it was all about really making sure that you're approachable, that people in the market understand what you're about, and how, what she likes to call, you build that social well before you're thirsty. And really it's about relationships and making connections with people, before you actually need them. And that's very important of what we're going to do in the next 2 days. It's all about making those meaningful connections with each other and making sure that you're driving for those connections, because you'll never know when you actually need them. And so that's really the premise of her course in that first book. Her second book, which there are some out there, signed by her, called Entrepreneurial You. Yeah. So, Reinventing You, Entrepreneurial You. I think maybe the focus is a little bit more entrepreneurial style and maybe on the business side of things, right? So we want to talk about that with you guys in terms of making sure that you're ready. We have different types of companies here, small family-owned businesses to large multi-billion-dollar corporations. And I think in all of it, you could still understand and apply what she's about to tell us. So without that, and without me rambling further, I'm going to bring up Dory Clark to the stage.
Thank you, gentlemen. So you all know better than anyone that we live in a frenetic world these days. I was talking with our very hardworking Eaton staff who's putting this on, And a bunch of them got up at 4 o'clock this morning to catch a 7 a.m. flight from Raleigh-Durham. Probably some of you guys did something similar. A study that came out in 2015 by the Radicati Group showed that the average professional sends or receives 122 email messages per day, which sounds pretty overwhelming. And it gets even worse when you peel back the research just a bit to discover that the number of emails being sent and received is growing at a compounded annual rate of 15%. It just gets tougher. A study by the Atlassian Group said that the average professional attends 62 meetings per month. And I don't mean fun meetings like this. I mean a meeting. And if you think about it, that's about 2 or 3 meetings per day. That actually is probably about average for most of us. And then you realize your job, the thing that we get paid to do, is actually the stuff that you fit in between those things. It's no wonder that we often feel so pressured and so pushed. And that's why gatherings like this, where you get to take a little bit of a step back, take a little bit of a breather to connect with colleagues, to get a look at the big picture, to think a little bit more strategically and get out of the press of the day-to-day becomes so valuable. As Graziano said, a lot of my research as of late has been in this question of how do we actually think more entrepreneurially? Now, entrepreneurship is sexy these days, of course, but when we talk about it in the public sphere, so much of it is about startup entrepreneurs. Oh, it's Elon Musk, it's Richard Branson, it's Mark Zuckerberg. That's the thing that gets the headlines. But what I would like to argue, and what I know you guys are living every day, is that no matter what you're doing, even if you are, in fact, inside an organization, as most of you are, there is a methodology to thinking entrepreneurially. It's not about being 22 years old and wearing a hoodie. It's about applying a set of principles. It's about a way of looking at the world just a little bit differently so that we can get better results for ourselves, for our careers, and for our companies. And so today, I'd love to talk with you a little bit about some of what I learned in the course of researching my book, Entrepreneurial You, which came out about 3 months ago from Harvard Business Review Press. So one of the first stories that I wanted to share, something that had an impact on me in the way that I think about entrepreneurship, for all of us. Again, you could be inside a company, you could be running your own venture, but one of the realities that we face in the current business environment is that almost no one these days is just rolling in unlimited resources, right? We have constraints that we operate under. We have to make decisions. We have to oftentimes make a way out of no way. There's a result we need to get. There's a business line we need to get into. There's clients we need to win. And it may not seem clear at all how we can do it. But the essence of entrepreneurial thinking is being scrappy enough to start to see solutions where other people couldn't. This is a guy named Todd Herman. When Todd got started in his business, he grew up in Western Canada, and he was a youth sports coach. He started in this sort of genre. He was a mindset coach for young athletes. It's kind of an interesting niche, not necessarily the most lucrative niche in the world, but he loved sports. That's what he was passionate about. And he really got turned on to the idea of if you could shift young people's mindsets, young athletes' mindsets, you could change almost anything. You could really get dramatically better results for them if they cared about their sport. And so he knew that if he just could get in front of people, he could get more clients. He was convinced that he had something powerful and special to offer. But it was tough to figure out how to do it. But the first thing he did was he was willing to go on a sprint that some people would never even be willing to do. He decided that because he thought he was a good speaker, he liked doing it, he was going to max it out. He reached out to all the youth sports teams in the area. And in fact, he ended up booking 60 talks in 90 days. He reached out to these organizations and he said, I will speak to your team for free. I'll give them the whole talk, all they need to know about youth mindset and how to have the mindset of Olympians. But there's only one catch. For every young person who's there, you need to make sure they have at least one parent who's in the audience. And the reason Todd did that, which of course so many people miss, is that these teenagers, they're not his buyers. They're not the people who can make the decision. But he was willing to out-hustle people and to make sure he was speaking with the right people in the room. So he does these talks, and something unexpected happens. Now, of course, he did manage to get youth coaching clients out of it. That was great, but that's sort of what he expected to happen as a result of his efforts. The part that was a little bit more surprising was that as he gave these talks, afterwards, some of the parents would come up to him and say, Todd, you know what you were talking about, my organization needs that. I don't think this is just for kids. We could actually use that too. One of the parents that was there in the audience when he spoke to them was an employee, pretty high-ranking employee, for the Canadian government. He ended up hiring Todd. Another parent who was there in the audience was an executive at a National Hockey League team. He said, Todd, I don't think this is just for youth. Our professional players need this coaching as well. They hired him. Within a 3-month period, because he got in front of the right people, he was able to expand from being a coach for teenagers to immediately creating a new business line for himself, something he had never considered, with 2 blue chip clients to start with. Today, Todd has a business coaching Fortune 500 leaders, Olympic athletes, and he's built it all on the social proof that he was able to generate, because when he entered into this new business line, he had the marquee clients. If we can think just a little bit differently about how to get in front of the right people with our message, to reach them in an area like Todd with speaking, that we know we're strong, sometimes that can make all the difference. Now, another area that is often important and overlooked is the power of deadlines. Now, deadlines can be painful, challenging, difficult, but sometimes, and especially in the world of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial thinking, they're the fuel that makes other things possible. This is a guy named Michael Parrish-Trudell. He is a consultant in New York. He's probably best known for writing a book that was the companion volume for the Shark Tank television show. But a few years back, when he was thinking about going out on his own, starting his own business, he knew he'd be good at consulting. You know, he knew that when it came to the sort of day-to-day of helping his clients, he could do that in his sleep. He felt confident. But the one thing that he wasn't very confident about, that he really wasn't too sure about, was selling. He had never actually ever made a sale. And he was smart enough to realize that the essence of being an entrepreneur and thinking like an entrepreneur, it all starts with a sale. That's what makes literally everything else possible. So he said, if I can't do that, I'm not going to have a business. Now, what most people do is they kick the can down the road. They do the things that feel easy or gratifying. They might, play on Facebook a little bit and say, that's my pipeline. I'm getting clients somehow. Now, of course, we need to have comprehensive marketing efforts. But when it comes to getting a sale, he knew that he couldn't just stick to what felt familiar and what felt comfortable. He needed to push himself, and what felt very uncomfortable to him, and therefore what he knew he had to do, was to ask for the sale. So he challenged himself. He really wanted to start his own business. He really wanted to make it happen. But he said, if I give my all, if I throw myself into this for 30 days and I can't get a client in 30 days, I'm going to quit. I'm going to give up and go back to what I was doing before. And so with that deadline in mind, something that really mattered to him, he did throw himself into it. He called everyone he knew. He beat the bushes for those leads. He asked for referrals. He told people what he was doing. He put himself on the line and made himself vulnerable in a way that a lot of people hesitate to do. 30 days later, Michael had not gotten one client. He got 3. And it started his business, and it proved to himself that he was able to do something that he hadn't been sure was possible. For all of us, as we think about new projects or new initiatives, as we think about skills that we want to develop but maybe haven't had an opportunity to flex, or we just haven't tried them yet, sometimes one of the most important things that we can do is to give ourselves that hard deadline, to push ourselves to do what's uncomfortable but can be necessary and important for the growth of our business. That's thinking entrepreneurially. Now, another element that, as you guys know from your own experience, is so important in making the sale, in being able to acquire business, in thinking entrepreneurially in the way that we want to really take things to the next level, is the importance of going against the grain, not doing the same thing as our competitors. If everyone else is sending emails, well, it's great if you send an email, but it's not going to look any different. It's not going to really distinguish you. And whatever that channel is, you need to compete, but you also need to think, how can we surprise people? How can we do something different? In a world where so much is about screens, for instance, you are here together in person. That is something remarkably different. How can you connect to people in a way that really stands out and gets noticed? That was the problem facing this woman. Her name is Joanne Chang, and she was a management consultant. She had gone to college, she'd been a math and economics major, got a good job doing management consulting afterwards. She had done it for 2 years. And the only problem was that after 2 years, she was sure of one thing, which is that she did not want to be a management consultant. When she thought back, they always ask that question, well, what were the moments when you've been happiest? What do you really enjoy doing? Where's your passion? She thought back to one thing that really stood out for her during her college experience. And it was not probably what her parents would have hoped. When she thought back to the times that she was happiest, it was when she was baking cookies in her dorm, and she would sell them door to door for $0.25 apiece. She got a nickname around campus, the chocolate chip cookie girl. When she thought about what she really wanted to do, she thought, I want to do that. I want to be a chef. I want to cook. But she didn't have any experience. She'd never been to culinary school. She'd never worked in a restaurant. She had no credentials. There was no reason for a restaurant or a chef to take notice of her. And she knew it. So instead of doing what everyone else would do, instead of waiting for the help wanted ad or the monster.com posting to list and say, oh, here's an opening, maybe I could do that, and apply with 300 people. If she did that, she knew she'd never stand a chance. Her resume would get tossed out immediately because she didn't have what the other people had. She realized that if she was ever going to get considered, she had to do something wildly different. So instead of starting with what was available and seeing if she could mold herself to it, she asked herself a different question that in a lot of ways we need to learn to ask ourselves, which is, what's the best case scenario? What do I really want? And how could I make myself attractive to receive those opportunities? Joanne made a list of the top dozen chefs in her city that she loved and respected. And she wrote each of them a personal letter. She explained who she was, what her background was. She told them, look, I don't have any experience. I acknowledge that. But I am willing to work hard. I'm passionate about this. I am willing to do anything. She mailed the letters, mailed them. The next day, the letter arrives in the restaurant of Lydia Shire, who is one of the great legendary chefs in Boston, where Joanne lived. And it turns out that day, Lydia Shire's prep cook quit. She gets Joanne's letter and says, you know what? What could it hurt? Let's give this woman a chance. She brought in Joanne, who ended up working for her for a year and a half. Literally, this woman, this magna cum laude math and economics graduate, was washing and chopping vegetables every day for a year and a half. Gladly, because it was teaching her what she wanted to know. It was teaching her how to run one of the city's premier restaurants. She ended up, for the next 7 years, working, apprenticing for a variety of other great chefs. And in 2000, she was ready. She opened her first bakery to almost universal acclaim. Today, she owns 4 bakeries, a restaurant, she's written 2 cookbooks, and she's won a James Beard Award, which is one of the most prestigious awards in the culinary world. And it's all because she made herself known in a different way. If you are playing the same game as everyone else, almost always you will lose, especially if you're smaller or less experienced, you're scrappier. You're at a structural disadvantage. You have to learn to play a different game. But when you do, you can stand out. For me, the best part of this story, with all of Joanne's success, the best part of the story is the fact not just that Lydia Shire reached out and gave her a chance. It's that over the course of the next 3 weeks, every single one of the chefs that she had written to got back to her personally. We think sometimes that the people that we want to reach are so hard, so elusive, so locked down. But oftentimes, if we can reach them with a sincere message, if we can do something just a little bit different, they do take note. So, I'm not sure if any of you guys are podcast listeners. This is something that I enjoy a lot. In fact, I took a walk a little earlier this afternoon on the boardwalk by the beach for about an hour, and I listened to a podcast while I was doing it. While you're here, I highly recommend that. Incidentally, it's very nice and very warm. But I want to talk to you for a minute about podcasts. One of the statistics that I discovered in the course of researching my book, Entrepreneurial You, that I thought was probably the most stunning one in the entire book was this one. It was uncovered by a researcher named Josh Morgan. He did a longitudinal study of podcasts from 2005 to 2015, so 10 years of podcast data. Now, he discovered a couple of things. Number one, as you might imagine, there are a lot of podcasts. When he did this study in 2015, there were 206,000 podcasts. That is an enormous number, and it's one that has only grown since then. The estimate now is there's about 300,000 podcasts out there. It's just surging in popularity. That's number one. But number two, even more to the point, what he discovered is that out of these 206,000 podcasts, only 40% of them were currently active. And over the life of the podcasts, the average podcast lasted only 12 episodes before its creator shut it down and stopped doing it. Now, That's a story about podcasts. That's a statistic about podcasts. I would like to posit to you that it is also a statistic about life. Oftentimes, we don't even try. We don't even bother to approach that client or that company or to enter that new market because it seems so crowded. It seems so overrun. But oftentimes, if you just peel it back a little bit, you realize that while it might seem that you're starting out with 206,000 competitors, you're not talking about that many. In reality, you're talking about 2,000, or maybe even 200, if you persevere. This is a gentleman that I profiled, an entrepreneurial you named Jordan Harbinger. He started his podcast in 2007. Ancient in podcast land. For 11 years, he has been doing his podcast. It's called The Art of Charm. It is an iTunes Top 50 podcast. It's a stunning achievement for an individual to be an iTunes Top 50 podcast. That, you look at the list, it's ESPN, it's Disney, it's NPR, and it's Jordan Harbinger. And a huge part of the reason why he has been able to do it is that unlike so many of his competitors, he persevered. He's on episode 700, 800. He's been doing it for years. And here's the thing. Even in the early days, he wasn't that consistent. He'd do one week, and then he wouldn't do it for a while, and then he'd pick it up again. He didn't have to be perfect from the beginning, but he kept it up. And over time, as he realized the importance of consistency and professionalism, he started doing it more regularly. He would do it every week at the same time. And then when he realized that consistency was paying off, he would do it twice a week. Now he does it 3 times a week. He's begun to build an empire, and that's how he's been able to rise so far. But the most important part, you don't have to have it right from the beginning. He's pivoted his podcast. Originally, he mostly talked about dating. Now he's, in his mid-30s and married. He doesn't talk about dating anymore. His podcast is about business and psychology. You can evolve, you can iterate, but you have to stay in the game. You have to persevere. If you're able to do that, you can outlast the vast majority of the competition that when they don't see immediate results, they get out of the market. That's how you win and they lose. Now, in my work, one of the pieces of research that I think has been most important, which I cite again and again, is research that's been done by a gentleman named Ronald Burt, who's a sociologist at the University of Chicago. And his research is in something called network theory, which basically means the study of how to make yourself indispensable in a network. It's kind of an interesting question, especially for people who work in larger corporations. How do you make yourself indispensable in a network? What he discovered is that for the vast majority of people, if you map out their networks, if you were literally drawing the connections of the people that they talk to and interact with on a regular basis, almost always, for most people, it's going to look like the little guy over in the corner there. It's going to look like this random circle, talking to one person, maybe 2 people, not very many. Because the way that human nature is that we get into ruts. We talk to the same people. We work with our project team. That's what we do. And as long as we're not getting negative feedback or negative performance reviews, we keep doing our thing. We feel like, hey, I'm doing what I need to. That might be fine. That might be sufficient. But it is not how you make yourself indispensable. The way you make yourself indispensable is to be like the person in the middle of that chart. The big circle connected almost everywhere. For almost every organization, what happens even if you try to guard against it, is that organizations form silos. And you guys probably have all seen this in your own lives. This company isn't, or this department isn't talking to that department. This field office isn't talking to that field office. This field office isn't talking to headquarters. You know, these two VPs hate each other, whatever it is. But there's reasons that there are gaps. And when there are gaps inside an organization, it means that knowledge transfer doesn't happen. And it should. We all know we could benefit from it, but it doesn't happen. If you can be the exception to that rule, if you can be the person that, to use the language of the sociologists, bridges structural holes, if you can be the person that's not just talking to these guys, but is also talking to these guys, and these guys, and these guys, before long, guess what? You're going to discover things that other people don't know. You're going to find out about ideas, about initiatives, about best practices, about policies. And when somebody's talking about something over here, you can say, well, hey, have you talked to this person over there? Because they tried that last year. You should really connect. And people start to say, how did she know that? She knows everyone around here. Over time, it becomes part of your brand. It becomes part of your reputation. You are adding exponentially more value than other people who only sit in their silo, who only do the thing that they are paid to do. Now, it might sound hard or complicated to build up networks like that, but I want to argue that actually it's easier than you might imagine. I have a colleague who decided that she was going to try something like this. Now, she did not have a lot of free time to network. I think none of us probably do. But she said, you know what? I know I have at least an hour a week. I can manage an hour a week. And so what she did was she decided that once a week, she was going to reach out to a different person in a different department in her company and ask them to lunch. Simple. I mean, we have to eat lunch anyway, right? But most of us probably either eat with the same people from our team all the time, or maybe we skip lunch, or maybe we eat lunch and we're, checking Facebook, whatever it is. But if just once a week you make an effort to reach out to someone that you haven't talked to very much, that you don't know that well, if you can imagine the impact that it might have on you over the course of a year to have built 50 new connections spread throughout the organization, that is an extraordinary sense of context that you get, of new ideas, of connections that you can spark, that you can make. And frankly, it is an army of ambassadors, of people who know who you are, who like you, who want to be helpful to you. If there's a roadblock, if somebody's not giving somebody the document that they need, if an approval is slower than it needs to be, instead of banging our heads against the wall, guess what? Now you have people you can call who can get that unstuck. That's part of how we start to be able to add extreme value and to be the kind of people that folks say, wow, he really is indispensable. But that's not all, of course. One of the challenges in entrepreneurship, and also, of course, in corporate life, is that sometimes when we are launching something new, something untested, untried, but potentially great, potentially valuable, it's easy to get discouraged because oftentimes it does not show results as quickly as we might want. That's a fact of life, right? It's like being the podcaster that quits after 12 episodes. Well, no one was listening except for my mom, so I guess I'll hang up my cleats. How do we persevere in the face of setbacks? How do we persevere in the face of just not as much traction as we might want? Now, of course, it's important to be smart about these things. You don't want to keep throwing good money after bad. But presumably, in your organizations, you set targets in advance so that you know what your range is, what you can afford to lose and what you can't. What I'm talking about is the day-to-day. How can you continue to feel good about what you're doing, even when it's not showing progress at the pace that you might want? We've all been there. In Entrepreneurial You, I profile this woman. Her name is Stephanie O'Connell. And as you can see from her picture, she moved to New York to become an actress. That was the goal anyway. But when she moved to New York, she realized something pretty fast, which is that it is expensive to be in New York. In order to be able to keep herself afloat, and frankly, to just keep herself honest about her money and how she was spending it, she started a blog. It was a personal finance blog. She called it The Broke and Beautiful Life. And she started writing about her money saving strategies so that maybe she could help other millennials struggling with something similar. After a while, though, she started to realize, hey, this blog is kind of fun to do. And she was starting to get good feedback about it. People were starting to read it. Now, today, years later, Stephanie is a friend of mine. She is actually a personal finance expert. She's been on national TV multiple times. She's a regular columnist for U.S. News and World Report. She's written for the Oprah magazine. She has completely reinvented herself from being an actress to being a finance expert. And so when I asked her about her transformation and about how she was able to stay motivated even in those challenging times, what she told me was this. She said, a lot of people, if they got paid $25 for a blog post, would say, so what? It's $25. That's ridiculous. That's nothing. But she said, I remember the first time I got paid $25 to write a blog post. Because until then, I had only ever blogged for free. And that was a sign that people actually valued my work. And she said, I remember the first time that an influencer that I respected retweeted one of my posts, because that showed that people that I cared about were starting to pay attention to what I did. For all of us, whether we're talking about our professional initiatives, some project you're running for your company, or sometimes our own careers, sometimes things don't go as fast as we want. And it can be hard in those times to keep moving forward, to keep having a good attitude in the face of uncertainty about whether or not something is working. Why isn't it working yet? But what I love about what Stephanie shared is that oftentimes when we define success, for whatever it is, project, ourselves, when we think success, we think the ultimate end goal. Oh, well, I'll be making $1 million. I'll be on national TV. I'll be doing this. I'll be doing that. Those are things that if we thought about them rationally, they take years. It takes years to get to it. And yet, we often, in the moment, overlook those small signs of progress, those small signs of success, the breadcrumbs that show us that we are moving in the right direction along the path. And if we can begin to see those, to notice those more, it often gives us the courage and the perseverance to continue with what we need to do, to run that podcast for the 13th and 14th and 50th episode. So another part of entrepreneurial thinking, of course, is seeing opportunities where other people might not. And understanding that sometimes the obvious play, while great, while maybe we want to work toward it, there may be interesting side channels along the way. And that's why in Entrepreneurial You, I told the story of this woman. Her name is Fay Wu. And Fay is also a podcaster, but she didn't have 1 million downloads, and she didn't make $1 million. This is not a story about somebody who created a massive hit podcast and struck it rich. There are those people, And in fact, later I will tell you a little bit more about them and how they did it. But Fay is just a regular person. She worked at an advertising agency. She did branding and graphic design. And she decided, for fun really, that she would start a podcast. She wanted to interview her idols, people she really admired. And she thought it would be a good way to do it. So she launched a podcast a few years ago. And it's gotten some downloads, but not that many. But something kind of miraculous happened in the process. Oftentimes when we think about how people make money from podcasts or, a host of other things, blogs or whatever, we assume, oh, well, you have to have a huge following and you have to have advertiser revenue. Clearly, that's how you do it. And of course, that's one way to do it. But Fay discovered, really by accident, something else, which I think is instructive for all of us. It turns out that even though Fay didn't have tons of listeners, she really was passionate about the people she interviewed. They were not huge names. It's not like it was Hollywood celebrities. One example of people that she really respected, she went to a Cirque du Soleil performance, and she saw these two brothers that were acrobats, and she thought they were so amazing. They were so great. And she wanted to just get to know them. She wanted to learn more about how they trained and how they did what they did. So she invited them on her podcast, and they said yes. But as she was inviting them on, she went, of course, to their website, and she did branding and graphic design and web design. She noticed their website sucked. And this is a little tricky, right? Because you don't want to tell people their website sucks. I mean, maybe they designed it themselves, or maybe they would be offended. But anyway, it stayed in her mind. She has them on the show. They connect even more. They get to be pals. And eventually, over time, she decides, you know what, I've got to say something to them. So she writes them a letter. She writes them, an email. And she says, hey, no worries if this isn't of interest. Feel free to ignore it. But, because I used to do this for a living, I just had some thoughts. Here are some easy things you could do to make your website just a little bit better. You could streamline the navigation, you could change this. None of it was very complicated, and she made very helpful, concrete suggestions about things that they could do. So they get the email, and she's a little nervous about how they're gonna respond. They're gonna be offended? What are they gonna think? But they write back and they say, Fay, these are great suggestions. Thank you for taking the time to do that. Could you do this for us? And she hadn't even considered that. It wasn't that she was pitching for business, but she just wanted to help. She was offering suggestions, but they didn't have a good web designer, so they ended up hiring her to redo their website and their whole brand identity. And in fact, they aren't the only ones. Over the course of her podcast, over a 2 or 3 year period, Fay actually managed to convert 25% of her podcast guests into her clients. Not because she thought about her podcast as a way of getting business or a lead gen technique, but because it was a way of meeting people she respected and connected with, and as a result of their friendship, she was able to turn them into clients. For all of us, we can often benefit by asking the question, how can we create a deeper relationship, and how might we find non-traditional sources of business or business lines that other people are overlooking? So, I promised you a story about successful podcasters. This guy is actually one of them. His name is Pat Flynn. He lives not too far from here in San Diego. But before he had a podcast, he had a blog. And the way that he created this blog, I think, says something powerful for us. Pat was an employee at an architecture firm, and he wanted to pass the LEED certification exam. Now, you guys are probably familiar with it. It's the big green building exam. It's considered, the gold standard in the field. So he wanted to pass it, but it's not an easy test, right? It's very complicated. So as he was studying, he thought, you know what, maybe I'll set up a blog, and I'll blog about my experience studying for this LEED exam. And maybe I can help some other people. Certainly, by writing about it, I can solidify my learning. So he does this for a number of months, and eventually he passes the exam. It works. So that was pretty cool. And over time, this was 2008, the environmentalism was very hot. Lots of people wanted to pass the LEED exam. And so his website that he had set up started to get quite a bit of traffic. So after he passed the exam, he started to think, I wonder if some people here would be interested in having the blog posts put together as a book. Now, he had them all for free. Like literally, you could go through and you could read every single post if you wanted to for free. But he said, just for convenience, I wonder if any of the people would like to just buy it in book format. So just as an experiment, he put it all together, got a print on demand kind of thing, and he set it up where people could purchase it for 25 or 30 bucks. So he sets it up. He might, he assumes he might sell a few copies, goes about his business. Turns out, unfortunately, a month later, it's 2008, Pat gets laid off from his job at the architecture firm. The building industry is frozen solid. You guys remember, nobody was building in 2008. Credit was freaking out. Nobody knew what was happening. And it was pretty obvious when he got laid off from his architecture firm, he was not going to get a job at another architecture firm because no one was hiring, especially junior employees like him. But something pretty powerful had happened that actually made this okay, which is that during the month since Pat had put his book online, he managed to sell $7,900 worth of his book. This book that all the blog posts were available for free, but he sold $7,900 worth of them, which was twice what he was making at the architecture firm. This could have been an incredibly traumatic time. He was engaged. He clearly couldn't get another job anytime soon in his industry, but he had enough hope thanks to this, this uptick of interest, people buying his book, that he said, well, maybe I'll explore this. Maybe I'll do blogging full time. And that's what, he ended up doing. He started his blog. Ultimately, he started his podcast. And a decade later, he's considered one of the most successful podcasters in the business. But what I find most remarkable about Pat's story is that as he was getting started, he wanted to understand, who were these buyers? Why were they purchasing the book, especially since they could have gotten it all for free just by reading the website. And so he did a survey of his buyers. And it turned out that 25%, a full 25% of the people who bought his book had already passed the LEED certification exam. It didn't make any sense at all. So he reached out again and he said, well, wait, why did you buy the book if you already passed the exam? And he said, Pat, this is the first thing you had to sell. We didn't have a way to say thank you before. Your blog helped me through passing this exam. I wanted to give back. I wanted to say thanks. Think about that for a minute. 25% of his customers didn't need his product, and they bought it because they were that loyal to him and wanted to say thank you. If we, in our businesses, can start thinking that way, how do you create a customer base that loyal, that committed? That becomes the kind of powerful lifetime relationship that can get you through almost any up and down. Customer loyalty is everything. Let me tell you one more. I promised you 9 ways to think more entrepreneurially. This is a guy named John Lee Dumas. John himself is also a successful podcaster. Not everybody is a podcaster, but there were some good stories about them. But the reason I tell you, it's not because podcasts are so amazing. The reason I tell you John's story is that in many ways it exemplifies the principle of how to think more entrepreneurially. Because it's about looking at the same facts as everyone else sees, but asking a very different question. John was a military veteran. He was in the Army, served in Iraq, came back from service, trying to figure out what to do with himself. Worked a little bit in finance, didn't really fit. Worked a little bit in tech, that didn't really fit. Finally he gets a job in real estate. Guess what? That doesn't really fit. It's just not clicking for him. But one thing that did happen while he was working in real estate was he spent a lot of time driving around, right? You can imagine, as a realtor, you're going to showings, you're checking out property, you're in your car all the time. And when John was in the car all the time, he was listening to podcasts. And one thing that stuck in his mind, first of all, he thought they were cool. He thought, oh man, I'd like to do that. But the second thing that stuck in his mind was he would get a little annoyed because almost all of his podcasts, literally almost all of them, they did one weekly episode. Now that was great, but he spent so much time in his car, he was running out of things to listen to. He wished that they were creating more content, but they weren't. So he got really interested in the idea of, could I do this? Could this work? So he started reaching out to the people that at the time were the most successful podcasters, best in the business. And they all were very encouraging. They said, John, you're going to love it. Yeah, do it. It'll be great. You'll have fun. You'll meet some cool people. You'll have some great experiences. But there's one thing you got to know up front. Nobody makes money podcasting. Well, how do they know that? Well, they were the best in the business. They were the most popular podcasts. They weren't making any money. Part of the reason, of course, it was 2012, 2013 when this was happening. The podcast audience wasn't that big then. And the way that sponsorship dollars were calculated, whether a company decided that they wanted to advertise on podcasts or not, is the number they look at is monthly downloads. And so let's pretend you have 1,000 subscribers. If you have a weekly podcast, that would be 4,000 downloads. That's just not enough to get a company excited, right? Companies don't want to have, 1,000 different podcasts that they're parceling their advertising dollars out to. It's just not worth it. They want to advertise on big, prominent podcasts, and there just weren't enough ears for that to happen. But John noticed something, and he noticed something critical. The number that the sponsors looked at, it wasn't subscribers. It wasn't unique listeners. It was average monthly downloads. What he realized, and it fit in pretty nicely with his wish to have more content, what he realized is that if you have 1,000 subscribers and you have a weekly podcast, you're going to have 4,000 monthly downloads. If you have 1,000 subscribers and you have a daily podcast, you're going to have 30,000 monthly downloads. All of a sudden, the equation changes. All of a sudden, you're very interesting to advertisers. And so he went all in. He launched his podcast knowing that if he did a daily podcast very rapidly, he could outstrip almost everyone in the industry. And that is exactly what happened. Within 3 months of his launch, he became sought out by advertisers and immensely profitable. So much so that other people in the industry started turning to him and saying, John, what are you doing? This is amazing. And so he was then able to create an online community for other podcasters, which they paid to join, bringing him even more revenue. Today, John's podcast is considered one of the top business podcasts. He brings in anywhere between $300,000 and $400,000 per month with his podcast. The one thing they told him was that you could never make money from podcasting. And yet, it was there all along for anyone to see. When John realized that the key metric was monthly downloads, not unique subscribers, he realized that by tweaking one variable, he could change his outcome profoundly. And so for all of us, if we want to think more entrepreneurially, if we want to outsmart the competition, if we want to get not just different results, but dramatically different results, sometimes it comes down to learning to see the same facts, to see the same data, but to train ourselves to ask different questions. So I'd love to open the floor up now. I'll say a little bit more at the end, but if folks have any thoughts, questions, ideas, brilliant insights that they would like to share, we can totally open it up. I'd love to answer anybody's if there is something that is coming to the top of your mind. All right, good. It's a Quaker moment, just as the Spirit moves you. So I am going to be around afterwards, I'll mention. You have a very nice reception that Eaton's putting on. And so if you have thoughts, ideas, whatever, you want to chit-chat, I will be at the reception and look forward to meeting you. And in the interim, the question that I have for you is this. What are you going to do differently? You are here in this special time, right? You have a day and a half here in Huntington Beach. You have it carved out from your day-to-day responsibilities. You are meeting interesting new people. This is a moment where you can step back, when you are able to think strategically about your own business and how to bring it to the next level. And we've just shared 9 possibilities, 9 ideas. Over the course of the next day, you're going to be hearing even more. If you can leave Huntington Beach with just one, that could be game-changing. Think of it as a smorgasbord. You don't have to do all these things. Sometimes we try to take on too much and none of it happens. But what I'd invite you to think about is this question: what's one thing? Maybe 2 if you get really ambitious. But what's one thing? What's one story that stays with you? What's one possibility or new way of seeing the world? If you, when you're on your flight back on Wednesday, whenever you're leaving, if you can think of one thing you want to change or try or pilot, or just a different frame to see your business, that's something that can make all of this worthwhile, and is part of why these moments that are set aside from our day-to-day business life, the hurly-burly of the emails and the meetings, that's what makes this so valuable. So I look forward to getting to know you and speak with you. I know you're going to have an amazing time here with Eaton. I'm going to turn it back to Curtis and Graciano. Thank you.
All right, was that good or what?
All right, well done. Thank you again. I'm the older one, and I got to bring the chairs up.
All right, my bad. 3 chairs.
Thank you.
So, I think in the spirit of kind of what Dory was talking about, and to launch and first, get some partners up here to talk about how they've been reinventing themselves, in ways that we're pretty amazed with. First, we want to talk about a little bit of where we've been, and I'll let Curtis talk about that, and kind of the evolution of the power category and everything else, right?
So you guys, first of all, thanks a lot, and Dory did an excellent job. That theme of entrepreneurial, when we became part of Eaton back in 2007 and 2008, part of a big Fortune 500 company, right? A lot of changes took place. And we had the flexibility to be entrepreneurials in a massive company. 60, 70,000 people. And they said, listen, this power category, the data center, it's forever changing. We've got a good base of business here. How are we going to go attack it? And our executives gave us the freedom to do some of those things that Dory was able to express to us, right? Be creative, think differently, be connected to people. This is why we're here in this room. And I have to say, thank you all for being here, because in 2009, we were unknown. And what I realized was we had a lot of work to do. And we couldn't do it by just raising a flag. We couldn't do it by shaking everybody's hand. We had to be different, right? And that's why I think what Lori has stated is so germane to why you guys are here and what we've tried to accomplish now for 9 years. So this is our 9th year of a partner council, right? You guys can go through all my bullets that you want, but the reality was we've always wanted to give you as our partners and our customers choices. We've always wanted to help you guys be educated and understand where we fit and how we're integrated into the things that you do on a day-to-day basis, whether that's the data center, whether that's technology that we're selling, whether that's solving problems in an infrastructure. And that's how we kicked this off, right? So we took a step back and started talking about what's happening in this market. And you know how we differentiated ourselves? Because we didn't talk about the product. We wanted to listen to you guys and talk to you about your business and how we can fit. We wanted to align with the changes in the data center. And for 9 years, you guys are part of our 9th council. Quite honestly, I never thought we would be able to sustain it, but it goes back to what Dory's talking about. Can you outlast your competition? And the reality, I think we've done a pretty darn good job of helping not only outlast, but helping you guys be vital to the strength of our organization. The trainings we put together in the program, the communication that we have, the one-on-one, and I'll talk to you guys a little bit more tomorrow about the breadth of resources you all have available to you. You're in this room because you're shaking hands with our sales team. You're communicating with our marketing organization. You're talking to our product management team. You guys are some of the best partners we have, and we appreciate that. But in our 9th year, we want to take the next step. And the step is this. When I started in this industry, 1992, I'm dating myself, and yes, that's gray. I didn't purposely color it for looking more attractive. This industry was called the battery backup industry, the uninterruptible power supply. Does everybody remember? Who remembers the battery backup market that we're in? Yeah, crazy. Over the course of the 9 years, we've changed it to power management. And I will tell you, 5 years ago, I coined this phrase to a partner and said, it's going to be power management as a service. We're going to help you guys figure out a way to create sustainable revenue through a service-oriented business. We're getting there. We need your guys' help. And that's where we want to take it for the next 9 years. Okay? So at least from my perspective and looking back, Dory is spot on. Because Eaton had an opportunity to become entrepreneurial. You guys as our partners took us on. Some of you have been with us for a long time. And we've taken huge strides in this industry together. And my hope is that when you guys leave here today, you've had an opportunity to communicate what's working, what's not working, where we can be better. Because we're going to go leave, and I promise you, we will go incorporate those suggestions and your guys' feedback into how we go to market. So humbly, thanks, Dory, for giving me a great platform here. But I want to thank each and every one of you guys for being here in Huntington Beach. It means a great deal.
All right. So we have 2 verticals that we're going to focus on in terms of really looking at partner success and end user success. And to highlight those verticals and their education and FedGov. And to highlight those verticals are 2 partners that are really important to us, Bruce Gray and Kevin Mullen from A-Track and WWT respectively. So we're going to bring them on, but first we have a video from one of those that we want to show. Or we don't. Okay, never mind. No videos.
Thank God we're not doing a podcast. All right.
I'll keep going.
Yeah.
I won't quit.
That's right.
But what we're going to do is bring, I guess, one up at a time.
Yeah, let's do one at a time. We'll both sit down with them.
So, Kevin, are you out there?
Just pretend there's a fireside here.
Yeah.
All right.
Kevin, do you mind joining us up here? And we're gonna talk a little bit about A-Track. So, interesting little tidbit with me and A-Track and Kevin is, the first time I met him, we were in, I think it was Durham, correct?
Yeah.
And we went to a hockey game. We were talking about the security stuff. How you doing, Kevin? Welcome. How are you doing?
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, he's from New England.
We had a tough
Let me give him a hug.
We had a tough class.
Let me give him a hug.
happen often. Doesn't happen often.
Come on, have a seat. Have a seat. We'll chit chat a little bit.
Yep. And when we had that talk, Kev, we were really getting into security and the focus of security. And you had a lot of, really good ideas about what we can do with the power category, the power management category, as it pertains to security. And, I guess before I go to the example that we talked about later on when you called me back, and I think I was in South Beach, but we had talked for a little while about what was going on. First, tell us a little bit about A-Track and what you guys focus on, so then we can kind of tie in the story a little bit later.
Yeah, absolutely. So A-Track is it's a traditional VAR that's morphed into what I call a solution provider, right? So we've been in business for 20 years. We started doing what a lot of the traditional VARs have done, where we were doing white box systems, reselling hardware and software. And over time, we sort of moved more towards we took more of a consultative type approach, where we said, we need to differentiate, right? And how are we going to do that? And one of the ways that we looked at doing it is we said, we need to increase our skill sets, we need to focus more. And one of the things we really need to do, and Curtis just made a great comment about how we need to stop talking about products, and we need to start listening more to our customers. So we built up practice areas around, cyber for one, big data practice. We focused a lot on early days machine learning. That was something that was very big for us. And what we did was we retrained our sales folks, and we said, okay, if we go out and we start talking to our customers and listening to our customers, guess what? They'll tell us exactly what they need, right? So we actually changed the way we were going to market, and we said, let's retrain our sales staff to just really go and look and listen and talk to those customers. And instead of pushing technologies on them, we can actually talk about solutions. And that's really kind of where things came up. So in listening to and talking to our customers, that's where we get a lot of ideas in terms of how do we go to market now.
Fantastic. Where are you guys located? I mentioned in New England.
So we're just outside Boston, suburb of Waltham.
Fantastic.
Like I said, we've been in business for about 20 years, and like a lot of ours, we're regionally focused, but we have customers nationally that we support.
Yeah, fantastic. And you've been an Eaton partner for
long time,
almost those 20 years.
Yeah,
So
long time.
Yeah,
I think my first partner council was at the Gaylord in Texas.
Yeah, it was. That's
which
right.
was great.
It was.
I always look forward to this conference.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it. So customers actually want to tell you what they need sometimes if you keep asking, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a novel concept, right? But I think one of the things that we did a lot, right? Like a lot of people do. Dory had made the point of hey, you send out emails, everybody does that, whatnot. And I think we spent a lot of time pushing technology on people. And we're pushing technology to find a problem, maybe,
right,
as opposed to just understanding what the problem was and then focusing a solution around that.
So today we hear of end users in this kind of, I don't know the best way to describe it, maybe holding pattern. They want to make decisions with cloud, right? With these platforms that they're going to take on, transitioning that infrastructure. How are you guys addressing that with your customers and educating them on the right direction to go from an infrastructure and even leveraging of cloud and leveraging of that type of infrastructure deployment?
So certainly, I mean, customers' workloads are changing, right? Applications are changing, workload distributions are changing and whatnot. So we have a lot of customers who are looking to go to the cloud, but they're looking to do it in more of a sort of hybrid approach where they're saying, we don't want to necessarily give up all the control. We still want to have control and granularity over what we're doing. So we we really kind of sit down and work with the customer to say, okay, what's going to be the best for you? And it might be, a piece part approach where we say we might, have some applications that we'll push up to the cloud, some that will run locally. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's really about what's going to make the most sense for that customer's business. Right?
Sure.
And we make sure we want to understand what those business line objectives are and those type of things. So it's not necessarily always about the infrastructure and how it's everything, right?
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest change we have in this industry, right? Is when, especially working in our business, which is so focused on engineering, highly engineered solutions, right? going after a particular problem is to adapt and understand that there's decisions that are cascading down that can
Absolutely.
affect the infrastructure. Can you give us an example maybe of a customer, no names, obviously, because there's might be competition out here.
Well, I can give a great example of
But yeah,
a
can we go through an
customer.
example?
I can give an example of a customer in more broader terms, a vertical, right?
Yeah.
So we do a lot of work specifically in the healthcare segment. Being up in the Boston area, there's a lot of healthcare organizations. Everybody knows the Mass Generals of the world, the Brigham and Women's world, world-renowned hospitals of the world, and it's such a fascinating area to be in the healthcare sector because there's so much transformation that's going on within that space from an IT perspective, but also just in terms of patient care perspective. So from an IT standpoint, what's happening is you're seeing EMR, you're seeing this whole concept of connected health, and okay, what does that really mean? EMRs, more granular diagnostics. We have customers that are doing amazing things with artificial intelligence and deep learning, where they're building up training models to be able to teach computers how to be a doctor. So amazing things. But what does that mean to our business, right? Those type of workloads are creating a tremendous strain on IT infrastructure. So these customers are working towards those hybrid models where they're saying, hey, we want to leverage the cloud, but we also want to have the ability to run things locally for security, for all these different things. So what that means is by going to the cloud and having these more distributed workloads, there places a big, strong emphasis on the network closet. We have folks who are, which isn't new, right? So we've talked about this for a while, right?
Yeah.
Where network closet, we've talked about PoE and those
100%.
type of going market. But those are for sort of the traditional devices of, lighting, wireless access points,
Sure.
phones, all the things that we traditionally know. But now with these, being able to do sensors and real-time telemetry within the hospital, there's tremendous amounts of storage, there's tremendous amount of compute that needs to take place. We literally have customers that are putting these, new servers, more storage in the closet. So from our standpoint, hey, this is great. We're already in those closets, delivering UPSs, putting in PDUs,
Sure.
we're selling power software in there. But there's a critical power has been well known within the healthcare space for a long time, right? Life support system, those type of things. But now, I think IT managers are redefining the network closet to be really critical because patients' lives are at stake, et cetera. So, from our standpoint, there's a tremendous opportunity there because it's the things that we're already selling, but we could just sort of repackage it in another way.
And for the broader audience, the things that Kevin's mentioning, we've had discussions about this for the last 2 years. Just use PoE as an example. Later this year, we'll be able to push almost 100 watts per port in a network closet, per outlet or per port. You're turning a 256 port network switch into a 3-phase UPS environment. And as you took away compute, right, because it was centralized, now you're going decentralized on compute and storage locally so that they can have that robustness. You're talking about almost a 2N application, mini data centers in the closet. So the conversation we've been sparking for the last 2 years, it's really relevant to us now. So to a lot of you out there that are core infrastructure folks from a power perspective, having that discussion with the customer on how they're moving workloads, being able to understand that, and then come up with the right solution, now that's where your expertise are desperately needed, is to have those true discussions about how we're going to manage the distributed data center basically in these environments. So.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things that the customers are asking us is, hey, we have all these new devices, we have all this, all these new needs. How do we plan for that, right?
100%.
And that's where we can help, in terms of to get specific, right? If you're talking about VPM, if you're talking about VCM, we can show them and say, hey, this is how you should lay out these closets. This is how you should lay out your rows in the traditional data center. Here's where we can support that. And that's where we're actually providing value add to our customers.
Much different discussion than how many racks are sitting here with how much
Absolutely.
compute in it.
Right.
And I think it's something you guys are going to, it's a little prelim for later tomorrow, but software and services and some of the predictive analysis that we offer connected to the devices that we're selling is going to be key to you guys pivoting and driving profitable revenue in those environments, as well as sustaining your customers'
And Kevin,
infrastructure.
you're talking a lot about orchestration of those, smart device or VMs into the cloud and bringing it back, right? And that was our conversation back when we were talking about security and the play. That's not there yet, right? But the potential, right? We talked a little bit
Yeah,
about.
absolutely. So, I love Internet of Things, right? I love IoT. I love all these devices and whatnot. Because what's really cool about it is,
I hope our product teams are listening.
what's what's really neat about it is, I just mentioned a few minutes ago that the customers are looking to leverage the cloud, but also do things locally. Again, back to the healthcare example and the hospital example, to be able to do real-time telemetry within the actual hospital room. So example, I have my patient gets out of bed, puts his feet on the floor. There's a mat on the floor that's taking his weight. As he walks through, he's got a wearable on that's sending sensor data over, and all this data is being mined to change how medicine is being provided and clinical pathways. Well, some of that can't go up to the cloud, right? So that has to be done locally. And that's where, back to my point about putting compute and putting storage in these closets, this edge computing concept is something that creates an amazing amount of opportunities for us.
100%. And for everybody in the audience.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good. And it all started with some discussion in South Beach.
No. That was later.
So listen, as you mentioned to the audience, you were at our first summit. I think then there might have been, 22 people, much broader audience here. But you've listened to these stories, you've enacted on some of them, you've incorporated into your business. What are you looking in 2018 to get out of the next day and a half, and how can we help you make sure that you're walking away, as Dory said, right, with one new
so I had said it when I first got on stage that I really enjoy coming to this conference, and one of the reasons that there's a couple of reasons I really like, but obviously, everybody wants
that thing one and thing two.
Well, obviously, everybody wants to keep up. We built personal relationships over the year, which I think is super important in business, right? You need to be able to have a personal relationship with the folks that you do business with. But that actually extends over the last couple of years, as it has gotten to be a broader base. I really enjoy the collaborative and conversations that I've had with other partners. I think it's a good community that we have here. I learned a ton, last year. Specifically, I was talking to one partner, and it was great to hear what they were doing in their market, right? We're not necessarily competitors. It's always good to hear what people are doing. And from my perspective, my role within my organization is I run sales and business development. So I want to understand where people are getting wins, right? So that's what I'm looking to get out of it. I always like to understand, what other folks are doing. And then, of course, strategically, I want to hear from your leadership team. I want to hear what you guys are doing. I want to hear how you guys see the marketplace. You guys were talking about, we just used the example of the PoE, right?
Yeah.
You guys were talking about that 6-7 years ago, right? And talking about where that closet was going to be. Now, of course, that's morphed and changed over the years, but you guys have also changed your product set with that too. So that's something I'm definitely looking forward to.
Good. Grass, anything else?
No, just obviously throughout the event, we'd encourage you guys to speak with Kevin, speak with each other, obviously, but definitely we look at Kevin as one of the people that always reaches out to us, and not only to Curtis and I, but he's consistently engaged with
Where's David Windsor?
With David Windsor, he's consistently engaged with Alex Ali, Corey MacGyver, who's a remote office, back office business development managers. If you don't know him, certainly someone you need to meet. But he leverages the people in the organization really well. So if anything, if you want to ask him questions around, hey, who should I be talking to at Eaton? It's probably a good guy, and you guys have your connections also. But we think he's one of the better ones at doing that. So we appreciate it, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Kevin Mullen, 8-Track, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, and it's coming to be almost an annual tradition here. My exploitation of Mr. Gray. Last year we had him up here, and we showed the video of a great win for State of Alaska, where we did some high-end customized 3-phase opportunities for them. But we really love the partnership that we're developing with WWT, thanks to Bruce's efforts. So with that, can I have Bruce Gray come up?
Ladies and gentlemen, Bruce Gray, WWT. right, how was the travels?
Good.
Good. Patriots or Eagles? Come on, talk to me.
Steelers.
I knew it.
So Steelers fans are pretty happy, right? We're happy with what happened.
I don't know.
Am I between beer?
Yes.
Well, then
No,
I-
we got a couple more.
Then I can just say ditto.
There you go.
Okay, so we have
That's what
that.
he said.
So we've had a long relationship with WWT. To Graciano's point, it's been with Bruce. Why don't you just tell everybody your role in the organization and a little bit about WWT? Just get everybody kind of.
Oh my goodness. So WWT is a systems integrator, supply chain management of VAR. Been around 27 years. We play in a public sector, commercial enterprise and service provider, IT related. And so that would be cloud, storage, compute, so forth like that.
I just want to say one thing. You taking the time to look differently at the category, recognizing that we have some value. Traditionally it was power and cooling, right, and rack enclosures, and we didn't come at it that way. And so I just want to say thanks to this broader audience. There's a purpose and a reason, partners stick with us as long as you have, and it's because I think we think alike.
It's really a free event.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, well, anytime we can get him out of his home state of Alaska, he's happy to come down to California. So
I don't make it free for you. I make you work every
Yeah,
day.
You do. But I also heard there's a hockey game involved here, so.
Yeah, we'll keep it going.
But a true story, you guys, and that I owe to our sales team and our marketing team and to Bruce, just being open-minded to looking at a different vendor, looking at a different approach, and we appreciate the partnership.
You're welcome. Yeah, you have to think about that though, because that's what even when I go to my executive management, they always tell me we sell IT.
Right.
So when you look at those 11 practices I talked about, I support all 11 of them. So I'm not a practice, I'm just a support thing.
Right.
And one of the things we learned just recently was really interesting to me because I continue to try to grow, like you say, bring you in and others. And I keep getting a little bit of pushback. But the thing is when the customer needs it, then we're here to do it, and that's what it is. So we lead with all the IT because that's the big dog, and then we follow up with the Eaton products behind it. So
Fantastic.
No, thanks, Bruce. And the last year we did show the video, and I wish we would have brought you up, but talk to us a little bit about that State of Alaska win and what you guys did with Eaton.
oh wow, that's like a long time ago.
I know, it's okay. We can talk about it.
Well, what we did, we had a large State of Alaska contract where they were doing closets and big data centers and everything. And so what they ask us to do, because we're usually vendor neutral, so we come in and we bring vendors to the table with all the specifications, and we allow the customer to try to decide on their own without pushing them one way or another. And so where it worked out was that the way that Eaton was positioned in this, we were able to write the spec around Eaton to get it into data centers. So all the three-phase UPSs were data centers. And so we did the original build out in their Juneau data center in the state of Alaska, and we basically went from the outside all the way to the PDU right at the beginning, and then this opportunity that you had on video was the upgrade 3 years later when they decided to do the whole campus in it. So, and then have automatic switch over and a bunch of other magic happened that they didn't do on the first one.
That's good.
Yeah. So, I mean, the one thing too is when you guys experienced that, tell us a little bit about, I guess now, understanding how that's evolved, knowing that you've gotten some wins under your belt, knowing that that first podcast finally made you guys some money. How did that kind of steamroll into more of a practice with Eaton and us?
That's what I did. I was taking notes when she was talking, and I wrote down all 9 of those things and everything I want to do now. And one of them was I want to be a podcaster and a blogger because I think there's money to be made.
Hey,
So
I think
there's a residual check from this when I get out of here. That was one of the
I
things.
think Mike DeCamp's out there, and we could set that up with the marketing
Yeah,
group.
got to make sure. 'Cause,
We'll call
Now
it.
you guys know why Bruce is a yearly guest up on stage.
what was the question?
No, I guess from your perspective, Bruce, tell us, how has the relationship evolved? I know that right now, Pete and the team are working with you guys closely on taking it to the next step, but tell us a little bit about, kind of the incubation phase, getting that win, and now you guys are really humming along with Eaton, having a great year, had a great year last year.
Yep.
So maybe tell the team a little bit about, how does that work? How do you get through those metrics, right, that we talk about, those early metrics to make sure that people believe in Eaton in your practice?
Yeah, that's the thing I'm told every time. Because we're not a go-to-market practice, really, we're just a support practice. It's come with the big win and tell us about it, and then the rest of the people jazzed. We just had our global sales meeting last week, and there's over 1,500 people to support customers. And so those stories have to be resonated through those 1,500 people. So when we talk about the Alaska win, that gets people excited. And of course, margins are always important, right? You talk about the margins. But the one thing that, I think you guys had asked me to talk a little bit about the Fed side, and one of the things about the Fed side, Eaton drives specifications. Worldwide doesn't in the infrastructure. So our account teams are really engaged with your guys, or maybe better with the Fed space, because we have over 80 procurement vehicles that we can utilize, all the way down to local government. And so when Eaton drives a spec, our account managers are engaged in that. And what that does is that takes that Eaton spec and it ties it to the Cisco or the NetApp deal, these bigger, larger deals where we can win. So if we were to go in with just a Cisco deal, they probably wouldn't talk about the Eaton or anybody else because the account managers aren't really focused on that. So that's where we rely on you and your team to drive specs, and then we can attach to that.
And I can say from the sales side, two things for everybody in the audience to recognize. They carry our letter of supply for the GSA, which is one of the contracts. But at the same time, we have a field team that's out there engaged with that end user and engaged with the folks at WWT to make sure we're driving the right spec associated to that Cisco or the NetApp gear or EMC, right? So that's where Bruce is going, and I think having that first one, we know. I mean, you've told us, get out to your branches, have those conversations. Potentially a WWT podcast, I think, would be necessary.
Oh yeah, it sounds like it's on.
But it's been a lot of ground grassroots effort that's paid off. But you got to understand which vehicles, and just so you guys know, we can have those one-on-one discussions with you guys if it's a particular vertical, whether it's healthcare, as we've talked about, or the federal government, state and local, because we're here to support you on that. And I think that's something that needs to be shared with the audience.
Yeah, and you look at your TA compliance stuff. I mean, years ago I was getting requests for that, and you're Google searching this stuff because you couldn't find it, and you guys got on board with it. So with the EPDUs, the single phase, the three phase, and even the cabinets now, as you know, we don't sell a lot of cabinets really, but we're starting to see that ramp up a little bit. So
good,
it's good stuff.
Good. Got anything else?
Guys, anything else?
No.
That's easy. Wow.
Yeah. Of course.
We'll get you soon.
That's right. So ladies and gentlemen, Bruce Gray from WWT. So I'm going to take a little bit of a turn here for you guys. You've been a great audience, by the way. Thanks a lot for the clapping. In the same vein as partnership, as we just described with Bruce and with Kevin, we have had a long-standing partner who's sitting out there and has no idea we're going to bring him up.
This is what we do.
It's a little bit of a surprise. It's getting chilly outside, sun's going down. But Tony, Tim, and Dan, would you guys mind coming up just for a couple minutes? We're still here. We got Tony Wan.
Yeah,
we got Tim.
They're pretending like they're not.
Dan around. I don't think they have an idea. Ladies and gentlemen. Tony Wan, little Dan Loftus, Tim Foley, Tony Wan. What time did you get up to fly here today?
It was 1:30 local time.
Nice. All right. And yourself?
I got out of bed this morning in Palm Springs.
God bless you. I'm so proud of you. That was a rub for the other two, you know that. And Tony, how about yourself?
Same thing.
All right. You realize what a great partner they are, that they just came up when I beckoned them, so I really appreciate it. But why don't you introduce yourselves, where you guys are from, and now you got to talk a little bit. I apologize for not having the mic. We'll start with Tony. Can we use it?
Yeah, of course.
Great. So Tony, tell the audience your role. I didn't want to do your bio for everybody.
Sure.
And the organization you're with.
Yeah, we're Tony Wan, President and CEO of H.M. Craig. We're a distributor out of Minneapolis, Edina, Minnesota, and we've been a partner with you guys for
Forever.
decades.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Good. And thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm Tim Foley, also with H.M. Craig. All three of us are out of Minneapolis. We've got people nationally in sales. We're a master distributor for Eaton.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the vast majority of what we sell. I've been with the company for about 4 years, and it's been a great place. It's a little cold there right now, so I was happy to get out of bed in Palm Springs this morning.
That's right. Timed it perfectly again. Good. And Dan?
I'm Dan Loftus, also with H.M. Craig, obviously. I'm the Director of National Sales, so my team is really the customer-facing team. So if you interact with HM Craig staff, it's my group that you're working with. So happy to meet you all here this evening.
Fantastic. Thanks for being here. You guys have no idea why I have you up here. And Tony loves this, by the way. He loves being surprised. Finance background, really loves risk. So why don't you guys tell the audience, we're not going to pull the mic, I think you can tell the audience, what are you guys celebrating this year?
50 years.
50 years. They're yeah, exactly. Now they know why they're up here. You know, I've been with the organization for 10 years, and I think in 2005 is when the relationship with HM Craig and Eaton really took off when we acquired Powerware. They have been with us every step of the way, helping us improve our practices, helping us be more efficient, going through system changes like brothers in arms that we've been in. But I have to tell you, we want to award you guys with a plaque today for your 50 years. And a great long partnership that we've had, Tony. So congratulations on the 50 years. You're welcome. Congratulations, guys. So guys, the team from HM Craig, glad to have you here, guys. Yeah, he's up, man. Listen, it's been a long ride. We know you guys, but we appreciate the partnership, and we appreciate you guys and your rock solid support of our organization. So I thought that was pretty cool. We're going to take a little bit of a change here. One more change. But it's all tied to how Dory kicked us off. Listen, last year we lost a dear friend of ours on the sales team and in the organization. His name was Brad Amano. Brad lived for events like this. Okay, he'd been with the corporation for a long time. Irvin and I have probably known him the longest in this room, along with Nancy Nelson. And he advocated for the customers. He recognized big corporations don't really provide context to their partners. We try to drive messaging at you, products at you. He always was the voice of the customer inside of our organization. And for him to not be here when we've had our largest event, you guys, we have 98 partner participants, and I want to thank you all for that. That's a huge accomplishment for our sales team. Great partners like HM Craig. Celebrating long tenure in this industry. It's a hard thing to do. Brad would have really appreciated it, and I just want to say from my perspective, a lot of you guys know Brad. I saw a lot of the heads bouncing back and forth. The context of this event for the next now what would be a day and a quarter is really around Brad's thought process. Making sure you guys understand who we are, making sure you have an opportunity to communicate who you are, and making sure that the executives in the ivory tower are listening, okay? And that we execute off of it. So in Brad's honor, we just want to take a moment out, like Graciana explained to you, kind of what we've done for the past 7 months that we hope you all would participate with us in. And I'll leave it to Graciana.
Yeah, and it's definitely a spirit, right, that we try to carry on in our conversations with our partners. In everything that we do, it's really personified by what Brad stood for. And so we made these bands, we kicked them off at Partner Exchange, where actually the 1 year last year, I think it was the first time he wasn't at the event, and we actually set up a counter for how many times people asked about Brad. It got to the high 50s in the time of the event. And it was just phenomenal to see how many people really just wanted to see Brad, and they associated Brad with the brand. So we have these bands. They're kind of like the Live Strong bands, but they're hashtag what would Brad Amano do? It went viral actually during the Exchange event this year. Everybody was wearing them. And the key to these is obviously go back, and think about Eaton and think about Brad and what he stood for. But I think the most important thing is we only have a day and a half with each other. So when it's 12 tonight and you think, okay, this meeting's at 8, you look down at your wrist. What would Brad Amano do? He'd have another, and he'd show up on time.
Yep.
Be a professional, guys.
That's right. Play hurt, but also remember what his boss would say, nothing good happens after midnight. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you letting us take a moment out, but really just in honor of us getting to know each other and you guys getting to know the executives, it's really an honor, Brad, so thanks a lot. All right, the rest of the agenda. We've got some fun things happening. We're going to do a little thing with the Eaton folks that are here, do some recognition here in a second. Your guys' responsibilities. You're our partners. Oh yeah, we're going to ask something of you, but we think it's going to be fun. So we'll get to that in a second. And then Panic by the Pool, what I'm calling an Eaton mystery. Graciano will get into that in a second. And then, all right, I don't even know what time it is. I've had our good people hold on to my cell phone so I wouldn't look down at it. It wouldn't beep. My wife or my kids wouldn't be asking for me. But tonight at 6 o'clock to 9, we've got the reception, just to repeat it again, at the California Courtyard. So,
Yeah.
all right, this is the tomorrow. Everybody has the agenda. You guys have a printed copy. I think you've got a digital copy. The reason that we put it up here, because it is an eyesore, is breakfast is at 7. And to Graciano's point, what would Brad Amano do? He'd be on time, all right? And he'd call you a silly SOB, get you a cup of coffee, and sit down and start talking about the day ahead. We've got some breakout tracks. Graciano will get into that more tomorrow. We're going to have a nice kickoff from Hervé in the morning, and then really it'll start the interaction, okay, from a Eaton competency perspective, all right?
Oh, and then, so we'll have a technical track as well as a business development session to close out or wrap up. So really it's about, what kind of action items can you guys take after you digest all this information. We have HPE here with us. That's one of the tracks. So there'll be a specific alliance track around HPE's integration. There'll be a track around the channel marketing and the MSP, Managed Service Provider program that we're launching, as well as everybody's favorite, the executive interface. So Dell.
Thank you, executives, for being up on the firing line. I'll give them that much.
So in that session, you'll have direct interaction with the senior leaders for our organization, and then a solution overview as well. So really good track. Start thinking about game planning, what you guys want to get out of it now, because the best things that you could do besides making these relationships and meaningful connections is taking this knowledge and applying it. So we want to do that. All right. So from our team perspective, the people that are here.
Yeah. So what I want to do first. Who's ever on the sales side on the channel team, our partner development managers, why don't you guys do a quick stand up? And let's give them a short round of applause.
Oh,
So we got our whole Western Reading team. Oh, they're all standing up already. Raise your hand then if you're here on the sales side from the team. All right. Those are the guys you go to when product doesn't ship and you need your MDF. Oh, all right.
All right, and the channel and marketing team. Where are you guys at? You're already standing because you're working all this.
Get some waves going here. All right, we got our mark. Come on, wave, Erica. You can more than one wave.
That's
Mike
you.
Camp, right here.
And
The guy
then,
that created the brand logo.
And then we got the product team.
We've got some folks on the product side.
The tallest people in the world.
Yep, 2 of them.
And then the shortest.
Oh, we got Kelly. All right.
And of course the executives. You stand up, guys.
So Dell, staff, Raul, why don't we give us a big wave, Hervé, Carl. All right. They're on the firing line, and I'm not prepping them, guys, so get ready. All right? Good.
Yeah, so, one thing that we'll also do for those that are socially inclined and those social media inclined, we have a hashtag Eaton Gets IT in addition to what would Brad Amano do. If you guys want to see what's going on in terms of, you trying to find out, hey, what are they highlighting on social? We're tweeting about everything that we're talking about on Eaton Gets IT as the hashtag. So if you do that, get involved. And then guess who find the culprit for Panic on the Pool will be entered to draw and win a big prize. So those executives that stood up, remember their faces because those are the people that you'll be trying to track. So Donna, am I going to get a video on that? Yes. All right. Can we play it? Yes.
So we got this Eaton mystery. Pay attention.
It started out like any other night. But at the Hyatt Regency Huntington Resort, things would quickly go south in ways no one would ever be able to forget.
Oh, it was awful. I just stepped out on the balcony for some air when... Please don't make me relive it.
Shortly before 1 a.m. on the morning of February 4th, several hotel guests reported hearing a commotion down by the pool.
It sounded like a party. It smelled like a party.
In addition to the sounds of what one guest described as the slaughter of live cats, later identified as karaoke, there was the distinct odor of smoked brisket. Acting on the complaints, hotel security headed for the pool, normally closed at that hour. They arrived too late. But security cameras captured what the guards could not. Here is an exclusive first look at that footage.
We can't release that video yet. It's still being examined.
If we were able to view the footage, this is what it would reveal.
I saw 2 figures jump over the fence. I don't even know if they were male or female. One was fully clothed, but the other one was wearing a towel, like a cape. Then the towel blew to the side and it was pale, so pale.
The hunt continues for this scandalous streaker, this nefarious nudist, this barbarian in the buff. After extensive guest interviews, hotel security has narrowed the suspects down to these individuals. Through further interrogation, you must identify the culprit and make the hotel pool safe for families once again. But be forewarned, while innocent suspects will only tell you the truth, the guilty party will lie like a beach towel. Your objective? Case clothed.
All right, Snoops, are we ready to get it?
Yeah, we told you.
Start mingling. Again, this is encouraged to you guys ask questions about who the possible culprit could be. We kind of did something like this last year, but this year we really want you guys to find out who this nefarious streaker is. So,
Cody. All right, there's a Canadian bias in the room. Listen, my family does frequent this pool, so all the help that you guys can give us, we'd much appreciate.
Donna, how are they going to ask the questions?
Were there any dolphins now? You guys have the questions in front of you? We're going to use the time at the reception to engage with the executives. You all saw our mugshots up there. We hope you guys find it fun. And I hope you guys can figure out who the problematic individual on our executive staff is. All right. So I think that's it.
Yeah, for now, just mingle, get along.
California Courtyard Room, 6 o'clock. I'll leave you with this. What? Yeah, we can go now. Okay. So we can go now. California Courtyard Room. We'd love to have a drink with you guys, get to know you better. Thank you for being such a patient and a focused audience. Really appreciate it. Look forward to the rest of the event, guys. Thank you.